Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use the promo code DNVR25. You'll save 25% off your entire purchase of that CBD-infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I'm your host, Drew Creasman. I'm the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me, as always, is beat writer Patrick Lyons, and joining us, as has become our weekly custom, is the voice of the Colorado Rockies on AT&T SportsNet, and, of course, the host of the Drew Goodman podcast is Drew Goodman.
What's happening, fellas? How we doing?
Feeling good. Feeling clean.
Yeah.
Warm weather out there. Rockies are playing some nice baseball. You're getting to see people in person again and talk to their faces.
You know what? It's beautiful. The last couple of days is flat gorgeous. I'm not going to lie. Rapid practice this morning. I came back from practice and I snuck down to the pool for a little bit. So it felt good to do that. You know, a week ago, I felt like we were shoveling snow still. So this is good. Summer, man.
It's ramping up, and it's ramping up quickly. It's great.
Yeah. And the Rockies at home, doing some homework, getting ready for this Oakland series. They're 19-12, sixth best record at home in the National League. You know, if this was a team with high expectations, which, clearly the Rockies didn't have high expectations attached to the prognostications this year, but you'd say 19-12, that's pretty good, right? Even, we're forgetting the road part of it, but 19-12, if they were a good team, you'd say, yeah, you know what, they're doing fine. They're holding up their end of the bargain at home, and they're, if they were 500 on the road, you'd have a team that's 7 games over 500, and you say, hey, they're in a good place. The road, that's another story.
The road, yeah. Cormac McCarthy.
Great book.
It's post-apocalyptic as well. You a big Cormac McCarthy fan?
I've read Cormac McCarthy. I've certainly read The Road. It's a combination for me of it's a great love story, father-son.
Yeah.
It is, dark, like a lot of things he writes, but really moving. I mean, that's not a book that you put down. You go, all right, let me grab the next beach, novel.
You read that in the wintertime. That's a wintertime read, but it's summertime. And, even like you said, playing so well at home, despite the bullpen having their struggles, and you go, man, this team has been doing it. And you throw out those 2 games against the Reds that they lost, that they were ahead, and you go, man, they could have had something here in a different season, and maybe even sparked enough where they could get it together on the road because they were so dominant at home.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they have a lot of deficiencies offensively.
Yeah.
But one thing that to me is fascinating so far this year, and somewhat inexplicable. We understand that the Rockies rotation was going to be the strength of this club, and certainly has been. And we understand that it's a group that is very familiar with pitching at Coors Field, with the exception of Austin Gomber. And yet they've gone out in a place that we still know they can be comfortable, they can understand it, they can throw there without fear, but it is still Coors Field. It is still a hitter's haven. It is still a place where, if you have a 4.25 ERA, hey, pat yourself on the back, pretty good. Historically, it's a 5.58 ERA overall since that park opened in 95. That's what the ERA is. So if you're beneath 5.58, you're above average. Now, their rotation has a 3.13 earned run average. Out on the road, they have a 5.58 road average. Please, you two guys who followed the club closer than anyone, explain that to me. 3.13 at home, in the greatest hitter's park going, 5.58 on the road.
So all I can do is make it weirder.
Do it.
Because we've been talking about this a little bit, and I've actually been researching this for a long time, because as it turns out, the Colorado Rockies' best pitchers, and we know this, we've all witnessed it, and anyone who's got a little bit of intuition knows most pitchers struggle more at Coors Field than they do anywhere else. It's harder to pitch there. All the numbers bear that out. But you asked any Rockies fan for a list of their top 10 pitchers in Rockies history. 8 of those guys in their Rockies career pitched better at home. And sometimes dramatically so. Jon Gray, Kyle Freeland, Ubaldo Jimenez, Aaron Cook, Jeff Francis. All of these guys pitched better at Coors Field. Germán Marquez is kind of the big glaring counterexample. And there is no such set of hitters who were better on the road. There's no list of hitters you can go and say, here are the Rockies hit. Gerardo Parra is the only one I got for you. And he wasn't around that long and had, whatever. But individual seasons where they were as good on the road, sure. But Rockies pitchers who seem to excel and stick around for the long term, Cook, Francis, Jimenez, Gray, Marquez, see about Freeland, have this thing. They've figured this out more than other people. And for whatever reason, the answer I think that they're coming up with to excel at Coors Field is costing them out on the road. Some of them more than others, and some of them have handled that better. But I can only make it weirder. I don't have the answer. It's just that it's wild. And these guys, and I think that's what's indicative of this group, is that they all kind of fit that category. Gomber is starting to maybe prove that he belongs, but Freeland, Marquez, and Gray, you look at their WAR for all-time Rockies pitchers, they're all up there.
Yeah, even if it was closer, like if he said, all right, they're having a great year at home and it's 313 at home and it's 385 out on the road, or it's 4 out on the road. But right. I mean, you're talking about a 2.5 run difference, guys. I mean, and we also have to keep in mind, they've been to San Francisco twice. They've been to San Diego. They've been to Los Angeles. Those are all high-end pitchers' parks. They're always gonna trend in that toward pitchers. So it's really and they've been in New York, right?
Yeah.
Which is more, it's better hitters' park than it was, but it's still going to skew toward pitchers. It really is hard to explain.
It's a new definition of reverse splits, because you're right. They should be. Yeah. It should be backwards, and you would understand it. And because it's this way, I guess it's the way you'd rather it be. You'd rather be confusing this way and say, well, hey, they can actually pitch at home at altitude. You'd rather have that problem, because you figure you got to be able to sort that out on the road at some point, because there's much less factors that you have at Coors Field.
Yeah. It's listen, from good for the Rockies right now. Good for them that they're playing well at home. Good for the Rockies fans to be able to see a nice rotation stay together. Freeland will make his 3rd start coming up in the next couple of days. Jon Gray takes the baseball tonight. I want to talk about a guy that we visited with before, and I know you guys have talked a lot about him. Austin Gomber continues to impress. He works quickly. He's got a 4-pitch mix. He's got a plus curveball. I think he's got toughness to him. I think, fingers crossed, they're pitchers, right? But I really think that I keep using this phrase, fellas. Who's part of the solution? Who are we talking about? The three of us, a couple of years from now, we're saying, hey, the Rockies are good, and this guy is a big reason why, and this guy's a big reason why, and this guy's a big reason why. Austin Gomber, for me, is going to be one of the parts of the solution for the Rockies getting back to where they were a few years ago.
Yeah, even after this season, he'll still have, or the Rockies will have 4 more years of control. So he won't even be a free agent until after 2025. So you're right, that's a huge piece. And as we've talked on the podcast before, the Rockies having some flexibility with their payroll going forward. You like their ability to keep those guys like Freeland and Senzatella, keep them around. Marquez is obviously already on a club-friendly contract. So they've got those pieces going forward still in the rotation, with some of those younger guys coming up through the pipeline. Lambert, we hope will get healthy. Rolison, we saw Chris Olivares during spring training as well. So there are those pieces there for the future, as you said. There's guys getting their opportunity, but there's also those pieces still on the pitching side going forward for the future of the franchise.
Yeah, Rolison threw the ball well, as you guys know, last night, which it was good to see. it's hard to consistently string together good performances at Albuquerque or anywhere in the PCL. But that was certainly good to see. You can't have too much pitching. You can't have too much depth.
No, and what you were saying before about Gomer too, we talked about it yesterday on the post game, is that in his last 3 starts, 19 strikeouts, 1 walk.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, and you want to know what? I'd go back one more. I'm looking at my notes from yesterday. If you go back, what did he end up with, 6 yesterday? If you go back to his last 5 starts, he has, to your point, 32 punch-outs and 3 walks. That's better than 10-1.
That's
going back to my high school math days.
I believe you did that right. Yeah.
Thank you. Almost 11-1, right?
Yeah.
Almost.
He's really been just very good since the calendar changed over to May, and he's carried that in through his first start in June so far. So I agree. And I think another guy who will probably be a part of the solution, but in a very different capacity, Patrick and I have been talking about this. You guys have been highlighting him on the broadcast the last couple of days as he becomes the Papa Bear of the team, moves up the ranks of all-time Colorado Rockies. Patrick and I have been already, I think he's got plenty of baseball left in him, especially if the DH comes to the National League, but that it would even make perfect sense for him to move into a coaching capacity, maybe even an analytics capacity. We know he's very interested in the analytics and the solving of these Coors Field dilemmas, and he's been, into all of that stuff. But what does it even mean in these moments? We know you've covered the Rockies through some down years, through some up years, hopefully again through some. But when you have a guy like Charlie who's there and talking about what it means to be to this point, and probably, kind of a lifetime Rocky, what the city of Denver means to him, what this franchise has meant to him, and what it means for him to try to instill that to the rest of the guys and be there during this time.
I think in life in general, forget sports for a moment, as we age, wisdom does come along with living over a period of time. And I think if you take Charlie, who certainly is still a young man, he's in his mid-30s, right, in early mid-30s at that, but he's been a major league player for the better part of a decade, and you start to look back and you reflect, and he's a reflective person. He's an introspective person. He's a deep thinker. And I think you get to a point and you live more in the moment and don't take it for granted. And I don't think he's somebody that was ever, lived in a cavalier fashion and just assumed, oh yeah, I'm going to be, playing this game for 20 years and so on. So I think he always had good perspective, but I think you're seeing him articulate it more as he moves toward the latter part of his career. And we see, other people do that, later on in life, depending on what they do. And so not a surprise to hear him say what he did to, I think you're referencing some of the stuff he did with Jeff Houston.
With Huey, yeah.
Yeah. And he's, you look and you go, hey, this is pretty cool. I've been in one place. I've had an impact in one place. It's a beautiful place to be a part of something. I mean, forget the bias. I mean, I'm looking out my window right now and I'm, cloudless skies, and I'm looking at white cap mountains. And I mean, it doesn't get better than this. And, and having the luxury of playing under normal times in front of 35,000 plus every night. You can't, in a perfect world, you win championships all the time. We know that doesn't work that way, but I think you're seeing Charlie kind of take the temperature of what has transpired for him over the last 10 years and be real appreciative.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that probably the organization might benefit most from is having those guys back. I mean, we've seen the impact that Vinny Castilla has had, in the past on the organization, and even just former players like Darren Holmes, coming in and extolling their experience on the players currently. And I think Charlie is been at the forefront of some of the adjustments with the magical curveball machine that they take out, on the road and at home. And I think, minus the championships, he could be potentially a John Elway-like figure for the Rockies going forward, where you see John Elway did it on the field, he's doing it in the front office, and maybe Charlie is able to do that. He still has a few years left, playing on the field, but maybe eventually he would be interested in a coaching.
Yeah, that who knows? I mean,
right?
What people answer questions at different stages of their life in a different manner. My guess, and this is a complete guess, knowing Charlie a little bit, is that I don't see Charlie working in an office. I see Charlie, with a fishing pole and waiters and spending his time, traveling the world, spending his time recreating, spending his time climbing a 14er. I don't know. Yeah, maybe he'd want to have something to do in baseball, but I don't see him being, grinding 70 hours a week. But I may be wrong, and that may change. I mean, it's funny you bring this up though, because as you guys know, I had Cargo on the
so good.
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah, you're able to check it out already, Patrick?
Absolutely. Yeah, everyone go ahead and listen to that. Drew Goodman podcast just dropped episode 99. The temperature is approaching the number of episodes that you are at, and this is definitely a hot one. Gotta listen to that to listen in on whether or not Cargo is officially retired or not. He gets into that. It was an all-time classic already.
I appreciate you saying that, and you know what a beautiful guy he is, and forget that he was a tremendous baseball player and a tremendous Rocky. He's just a beautiful human being, and I always enjoy my time with him, and it's a good listen. But one of the things that I've thought about, and we talked, as you guys know, with Cargo about being involved with the Rockies down the road and that sort of thing, and of course Vinny is ubiquitous and has been for a while. But the Rockies are embarking on almost 30 years of existence. There's some history now, and there's a Hall of Famer in Larry Walker, and there's hopefully a soon-to-be Hall of Famer in Todd Helton. And I think it's really important in this next chapter for the Rockies to have more of those guys around. And it may not be an everyday deal, but maybe it's a week, 10 days at spring training that Cargo's there, and maybe it's a couple times during the year on a homestand that Cargo's in uniform, that Todd comes back and is in uniform, or and it doesn't just have to be the iconic guys, but where it's the Cardinals are great about doing that. And I know you say, well, the Cardinals have a century plus worth of history. Yes, they do, but it's not like the Rockies were born yesterday. Now it's since '93. Ubaldo Jimenez, who obviously attempted a comeback with the Rockies, bring some of those guys around. Jeff Houston said something interesting to me the other day. He still gets correspondence via email about functions from Seattle, from Milwaukee. I mean, places where he basically had a cup of coffee. He wasn't Texas. He played for a few years. Baltimore had played for a few years, so that would make more sense. But they really do a good job with their alumni, and I think as the Rockies move into this next chapter to embrace some of their really popular players from the past, would do wonders, not only just from the public standpoint, so they get to look down at the field and say, hey man, there's Cargo, or there's Larry Walker, or there's Ubaldo Jimenez, but also to have those guys pass on who had success, the Spielborgs and the Sullivans, pass along and say, hey, it's important to be a Rocky, and this town has great Rockies fans and great baseball fans, and when you win here, man, it is special. And kind of impart some of that wisdom in addition to baseball wisdom, and I hope we see more of that going forward.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's wild to me is I know a couple of stories of a handful of times where they've done this, and it's really paid dividends. The one that came to mind as you were talking was Pedro Estacio. Swinging back by. I know he's been by a few times. I know he's done, kind of just, I guess you could call it freelance work, just showing up and helping out, like you were talking about, exactly what you're talking about here. And Jon Gray tells a story of a piece of advice that stuck with him from a very early meeting where he told him the trick to pitching at Coors Field is just to not give up the next run. And once Gray really internalized that, and you can see it on the field, he turns this corner and stopped letting those big innings happen, was able to play to his talent and potential and overcome this mental hurdle that had clearly been there for him. And that's exactly the type of imparting wisdom that you're talking about. Surely Todd Helton and Carlos Gonzalez and some of these other guys and Jeff Francis and Spilly and Sully and these guys should be in these meetings and imparting this wisdom on these guys regularly. It shouldn't be.
And even guys, and Drew, even guys that played elsewhere, like Matt Holliday's an all-time Rocky. I know he's, for Cardinal fans, he's a big-time Cardinal as well, and he does stuff with the Cardinals. The Rockies, he finished his career, which I thought was so appropriate, in a Rockies uniform, and it was thrilling to watch him have a couple of big home runs down the stretch in 2018, right? So. Matt's still in the game, man. He coaches with his brother at Oklahoma State. I mean, that's a such a great baseball family. Bring Matt back around, and again, I hope it happens moving forward. I think you're going to see some changes in the front office with the Rockies, and I think those can pay small dividends. But you add up small dividends and they become larger dividends, right?
Yeah, I think once they get finished with everything, and you might have a lot more information on this than we do, but with McGregor Square, I know there were originally plans with a Hall of Fame in there, and I think that's going to be that first little snowball down the side of the hill that's just going to pick up steam, and it's going to build this avalanche of realization for Rockies fans and just anyone coming to Colorado, the great history that this franchise has had, and I think that'll be the start of it, like you said, getting these players back into the organization.
Well, look how important the Ring of Fame has been for the Broncos, and they probably forced it a little bit, not to be disrespectful for some of the early names on there, but if you are someone who gets their name on the Ring of Fame with the Broncos, man, you had one hell of a career, and there's no greater honor other than, I suppose, being elected to Canton, which. That's an even smaller group, but I know with Rod Smith and some of the guys who have their names up there, really, really special, really, really important. You're not going to retire necessarily a multitude of numbers. 17's retired. Walk's number, rightfully so, obviously is going to be retired, 33. But there are other guys that could be Colorado Rockies Hall of Famers without watering it down and saying, oh, we need to make a big splash, so we're going to, extend that honor to people that maybe are borderline. You can still do it right, but you've been around again almost 30 years. You can start to put together a legitimate group, and so I would love to see that. I really would.
We talked about it this week, of the idea that now with Charlie, third most games all time, he's set to pass Larry Walker, and he most likely retire as a Colorado Rockies player. That I think number 19 is going to be set to be retired here at some point. And you know what? And even if Charlie doesn't want to be bogged down with being in office, Goody, there is something called Zoom. I'm not sure if you heard it. Gained a lot of popularity in the past year. So I don't know how great the Wi-Fi is up on top of Mount Elbert, but I tell you what, yeah, if anyone's going to do that job virtually, Charlie Blackmon, maybe. You never know.
You don't. We're on a Zoom call, right?
Essentially, it's a fancy version of Zoom that probably costs us a lot more money than it should.
Yeah.
We're zooming.
Yeah. I've said frequently now, if I'm never on another Zoom call, I'll be a happy camper. And here I am every week with you guys on a Zoom call. And I got one up at 3. So, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I hope one day, as people move on in their lives, I hope one day things can be smoothed out with Troy Tulowitzky, because Troy Tulowitzky was a great Rocky. Yeah. It's a great Rocky. He's adored by the fans, as they should, and. He was upset at the end, and listen, he's not the first guy to get traded and is upset with how it goes down. But I would hope moving forward that can be smoothed out, and how if you had a Troy Tulowitzky return to Coors Field, I mean, how would that play?
Great. That would be a big. I think that would legitimately be a big moment in the history of the franchise. Of, like you said, and of kind of. I don't mean it as a condescending thing. Anyone who knows me knows I never mean to condescend to the Rockies or their fans. I hate it when people do that. But growing up a bit as a franchise and really taking that next step, I think that would be big for everybody involved. And it's as you said, it's a part of all of this, of honoring your history, your past, your greats, embracing them as the true greats who've worn your uniform. And of establishing this is our legacy, and we're damn proud of it. And not all of it went perfectly. Not all of it went how we wanted. Yeah, we wish we could have played the World Series right the next day in 2007. That'd been nice. You can go down the long list of what ifs, but we're proud of our franchise. And I think you got to come out and say that so the fans can come out and feel it.
Yeah. Listen, it's professional sports, and it's a business. And you're going to make unpopular decisions at times. I don't think there's any ownership group or any organization that has been around a long time that goes day by day that where if you took a poll, everybody loved them every day. That does not happen. There's never unanimity on virtually anything other than we all wanted to eradicate the virus. But so. They're all chapters, man, and some are more difficult to get through than others. They're all chapters of an organization, but people who wear purple and people who root, for the home team, they want to see them have success. I mean, look how much fun it's been to watch the Nuggets. And congrats to them as they get past Portland. And I did their games for 10 years, only 2 of which were playoff seasons, and there was a lot of vitriol thrown in their direction. After a number of seasons and a number of moves, et cetera. And yet, you know what? We're all Coloradans. And now in this chapter that they're immersed in, they're fun and they got a talented club and everybody's in on them. And that's just part of being a fan of a team. At times it's a roller coaster ride. I mean, so that's almost how you have to look at it. I think it's unhealthy, even though when you get angry, when you hold long-term grudges, it's not really a good space to be in.
Yeah. Can't disagree with that whatsoever, especially around here. And also, by the way, as we're talking about where we know Charlie, whether or not he's doing the Zoom thing and he's still working or he's just out in the wilderness, wherever he is, he'll feel better if he's got his Castle Cattle Company Wagyu beef with him. He'll feel a lot better if he's stocked up on the beef. It'll be nice and full. We know he's got to love it. He's got to.
Drew, if I could interject in the middle of your spot.
Of course.
If he has Strava Craft coffee with him as well in the thermos, right?
Right.
Well, I just want to make sure that you work that into.
It keeps you going throughout the day. He'll be nice and set, right? But we know he needs the big beef for those beefy home runs. Having the power stroke come back over the last couple of games has been nice to see from him. Again, moving up the all-time home run charts on the Rockies things as well. But he is probably, I assume, getting all of his beef from Hassel Cattle Company the way I am. Wagyu beef, absolutely delicious stuff. And it's good for your, conscience because they treat the animals well. No hormones and antibiotics, any of that nonsense, really bad for them, really bad for the environment, all that stuff. And it's really good for your wallet because they've got constant promotions going on that make it oftentimes even cheaper than the stuff that you would buy in the grocery store that doesn't taste as good, isn't as good for you, and isn't as good for the animal or the environment. So go to Hassel Cattle Company. That's HASSELL cattlecompany.com. Use promo code DNVR10 to get 10% off. And don't forget that if you order over $200 worth, open up that freezer space and do it. It'll be worth it, I promise. You'll get free shipping. So again, that's Hassel Cattle Company, HASSELL cattlecompany.com. And you can save money, by the way, to spend on beef from Hassel Cattle Company by also going to our friends at Gabby Insurance. It's GABI.com/DNVR. you can save, if you're like me, at least $480 on just car insurance. If you're like our guy Eric Whedon, you'll save over $1,000 because he was insuring all kinds of stuff. Customers on average saving $961 a year. The national average Gabby insurance costs you nothing. You get no text messages, no emails, not even annoyances, just a little bit of time. It'll take you less than 10 minutes. I'm telling you right now, go to not our thing first, their thing first, gabi.com/DNVR and get your totally free check today. And do, of course, remember that these are just some of the discounts and promos that you get for being a part of the DNVR family. You should subscribe at the DNVR.com for all the written content, the discounts on merch, and all of these stuff that we get from our sponsors. Of course, the bigger beer down at the DNVR bar. And right now at the annual, you will get a free shirt from the DNVR Locker and a free stick from our friends at Holistic Wellness, HOLISTIK wellness.com, and use promo code DNVR30 to get 30% off after we send you that free one, again, just for becoming a member of the family.
Here's a good stat that you might like, Goody. Since May 7th, go back a little bit further, as even previous starts. Since May 7th, Austin Gomber first in all of baseball amongst starters in strikeout to walk ratio, 13-1. Matt Peacock's tied with him, but he only made 3 starts in that span where Gomber has made 6. Yeah. So he's been fantastic. And we've even really get to see, as you kind of alluded to earlier, Freeland's coming back to Coors Field. And when we know the splits that he had back in 2018 with being successful at home at Coors, and we know how well Marquez and Senzatella play off each other. So it's going to be nice when it's Freeland and Gomber going back to back, or even split up and just kind of following each other's lead. And because he's laid it down. He's laid down the gauntlet for Freeland to do it at home against Oakland this weekend.
Yeah, I like that they split up the lefties, but he split them up with John going tonight and Freeland. And you have really good competition. I mean, Senzatella is coming off another really strong performance. Herman is throwing the ball really well lately. I mean, John, I know the last start wasn't super, but he's been pretty steady throughout. I mean, the league's hitting in the 220s against John. So when you face the Rockies, you're going to see a good arm. And I think the back end of the bullpen's throwing the ball better. Daniel Bard's throwing the ball, much better. Carlos Estevez, I know he gave up the game-tying home run a couple of nights ago to Chris Davis, but prior to that, he had 9 shutout innings going. So that's been great to see. Offensively, some better things certainly at home. Josh Fuente's been unconscious at home. Garrett Hampson swinging the bat well the last couple of ball games. Listen, they're going to face a good team, better pitching with Oakland. So it'll be a nice little litmus test over the weekend. But you got a confident team, and you got a team that goes out there. And I know it's a cliche to say, "Oh, they never quit." I kind of hate that thing. I mean, who like lays down? I mean, if you got guys that lay down, they're completely in the wrong environment. But they do play hard, and it's important to them. And yeah, they're individually, most of these guys are trying to establish themselves as big leaguers. Their lack of success is not because of a lack of intent or a lack of want to. And then seeing them have success this homestand and what they did Sunday in Pittsburgh. It's good for them, and it's been enjoyable to watch. And I'm looking forward to getting to the yard here in a little bit and seeing how they do against Frankie Montes and the first place Oakland A's in the American League West.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you want to see that competition, especially when they are playing well at home, and say like, all right, well, let's see what you got against these guys. And one of the other guys that you were talking about, kind of the attitude of the team. And I think it's pretty clear it comes through the television, and it comes through, I think, if you're sitting in the cheap seats, is obviously Ryan McMahon's play on the field. We've talked a lot about, but also just his enthusiasm, his joy, his energy that he brings, his ability to swap around to all different positions and just kind of show up every day and be there for the team. And we've talked about it a lot, making a very, very serious bid to be an all-star. And when you really look at, and the ballots just came out and they got him listed there at second base, and you look at some of the other candidates with what he's doing defensively and the power, if he's listed as a second baseman, and we know he's actually, played some more third and whatever, like he might be the guy right there.
Let me ask you this, because you guys are better about researching this than I am. I haven't looked at the competition at second base, and forget that every team has to have an all-star. You want your guy to go, or your guys to go on merit, not just because, well, we had to take somebody. And I think when you look at the power numbers, when you look at the defensive numbers, it really at two different spots, he has played at an all-star caliber level. Yeah. Now, getting back to my original question, who would be the other second base candidates?
I mean, no one really jumping off the page. Ozzie Albies, of course, is going to get a lot of consideration. He's been okay at the plate. Adam Frazier, he's towards the league leaders in batting average, but again, Pittsburgh Pirate player, so he's not going to get a lot of attention. I think Jake Cronenworth is actually listed as a second baseman, so he could be that competition. Yeah. Colton Wong, Tommy Edman are two guys that are, again, having good seasons. And they've got a good fan base to support them, but nobody that's like a rightful heir. It's really any of those guys, and I think McMahon, leads that group in homers, RBI, runs scored. So I think there's a decent chance that he should be there in the Final Four. I think this is the first year that they're doing it. They were supposed to do it last year, I believe, where you get to the final week before they announce the starters, and they kind of have a reset. So it's a Final Four at all the positions. So I think McMahon could still be in that Final Four group. And then, fans go and look at the numbers and go, shoot, this guy's leading across the board. Let's make him the first Colorado Rockies second baseman to ever start in the All-Star game.
That would be awesome. I think he's deserving. I think he's legitimately deserving. When you combine the power numbers, when you combine the defensive metrics, he passes the eyeball test. Is there anybody else? And there's still time. We're still. It's June the 4th, and it's a first half award, as we know, the All-Star game. So you have another solid 4 weeks to at least 4 weeks to put your resume together. Is there anybody else on your guys' radar? Because historically, even when the Rockies haven't had good years, they've usually had a couple of all-stars. Is there anybody else that you think can rise to that level over the next month?
For the Rockies?
Yes.
I mean, Story, obviously, right, is the guy because he hasn't quite played like an all-star yet, but we know he's got it. And if he gets real hot, I think but the competition at shortstop is much tougher, right? Yeah, that's probably it.
On yesterday's podcast, we were talking about what German Marquez has done since that start in San Francisco, and sure, it's a bit of cherry picking, but you throw out that start at the beginning of May where he only threw 2/3 of an innings, gave up 8 earned runs. He has a 3.06 ERA throughout all the rest of his starts over the course of the season. And we know going into this year, and we saw it a little bit last year, that, again, national media has starting to take notice how good of a pitcher that German Marquez has been in his potential. So he's got a long way to go. But to your question, if he continues to go out and in his next 5 or 6 starts continues with 6, 7 innings pitched, 1 earned run, striking out 8 guys, walking 1, I think you could see him, maybe sneak onto the starters list for the National League All-Star team.
Yeah, I'm with you, Patrick. I think you go back to what we've conversed a lot about, not only today, but on previous episodes, and you guys do on a regular basis, the strength of this team is starting pitching. And if you're talking about another month, it's really almost 6 weeks, or 5 weeks, I should say, of baseball. So for that entire rotation, you're talking about a half a dozen minimum starts going forward. And yes, we don't expect the Rockies to, have some gorgeous record at the All-Star break, given where they are right now. But if you're looking for a guy in addition to Ryan McMahon, and I get Trevor Story. I mean, yeah, Trevor could have an unbelievable month and hit 10 home runs, and all of a sudden he's got Trevor Story-like numbers. You'd almost expect it because he's been so good for a while. But outside of that, I would look to that rotation. And interestingly for me, there's probably several guys. I mean, Jon Gray really has put together a pretty good first couple of months. If he pitches with, has a 2 flat ERA over the next 6 starts, you may go, whoa. The record, forget the win-loss record. I think we're all kind of out on that with starting pitchers.
Yeah.
Austin Gomber. I mean, if he continues this, and now we're talking about, guys, look at this. Over the last 12 starts, he struck out 67 and walked 8, and he's got a 1.80 ERA. All of a sudden, he may put himself potentially in the mix where a manager may go, let's take that guy. Herman is a natural. So I think there's 3 starting pitchers with the Rockies that if they went off over the next month could put themselves potentially in the mix where the home team gets more than one guy.
Yeah. Marquez and Gomber are kind of neck and neck with a lot of the typical numbers that the voters, or at least in this case, the coaches are looking at. We know wins is not important when it comes to these kind of awards for the All-Star game. But Marquez 4.13 ERA, Gomber 4.12 ERA, Herman 69 strikeouts, Gomber 66. They're 17th and 23rd, respectively, in the National League in K. So, both those guys, continue to start dealing. And we know with the All-Star game, too, there are some guys who get banged up and get hurt, and which should be, typically, let's say, a 13-guy rotation or 13 pitcher roster of players might end up being closer to, 17, 18. Yeah, you're right. Those guys can definitely sneak in, and nothing wrong with Gray or Senzatella if they continue to do it as well.
Yeah, it's going to be it'll be interesting to watch over the next month. And listen, this is a once in 30-year situation where you have an All-Star game, and I know it's more than likely going to happen in a year where the Rockies are an afterthought from a national picture, and they're in a rebuilding mode, or however you want to classify it. But it would still be nice to have a couple of guys in purple in their home stadium.
Yeah. My favorite moments of the All-Star game, and I love the All-Star game, is watching the hometown guys step up, tip their cap. And I think for McMahon and Marquez, particularly, who've been around, obviously it'd be great for Gomber, but for those 2 guys who've been, a part of this organization for a while and been through some down times and who are really going right now, I think it'd be really special for those 2.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, Patrick, guys, just to say really quickly, you almost wish this was 2018 and Kyle Freeland was doing what he's doing, because then you have not only a kid who was raised a Rocky, but a kid who was raised in Denver as a Rockies fan, and then a Rocky pitching at Coors Field in the All-Star game. That place would erupt if he came running out of the bullpen to throw the 5th inning or something like that.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, that definitely would have been poetic. And, with the home run derby, too, you might be able to sneak in a guy. Sure, we've seen it in years past where you're not an all-star, but you can still participate in the home run derby. I mean, I don't know what it would take to maybe coax Charlie Blackmon to do that, but if he's not an all-star by his own merits, maybe say, Charlie, come on out and hit some bombs over there.
Charlie did it once, right? And he said it's fatiguing and so on. And Charlie takes such great care of his body. But
it's a tough spot.
It would be pretty
throwing
cool.
her in the home run derby. Why not?
Yeah.
Go watch him go yak.
It would be cool. I'm trying to think. There's Story, Story is the
he could.
Story's the likely guy, even if he's not an all-star, to partake in that. My guess is they're going to find a way to have, more representation in the all-star activities, if you will.
Sure.
Just one player, if that's all that ends up being. I hope that's the case, man. It'd be fun.
Well, don't forget the NL champion and subsequently as the World Series champ, Los Angeles Dodgers. Dave Roberts gets to be the manager, so you we know Bud Blacks should be on that coaching staff.
Oh, that's a no-brainer. That's a faith.
So there we go. There's another one. We could throw another Rocky in the All-Star game. He'll get a great round of applause. That'll be wonderful.
Yeah, but you want to, and it's awesome for Buddy. And listen, Buddy and Buddy may have been on the staff anyhow, because Buddy and Doc, as you guys know, are very close friends. But you want that moment where, as Drew said, the guy can come to the plate and tip his cap. Or in the case of a home run derby, that's a prolonged thing. You're watching your guy for 10 minutes, try to hit the ball 5 miles, and then hopefully they're able to move on. Well, yeah, we'll see. It's going to be a blast. It'll be a whole lot of fun.
It's going to be fun. We're going to wrap it up there today. Goody's got to go. I got to get over to the Denver Sports Podcast. So if you're here with us on YouTube, make sure you're getting over there to watch that. We, of course, always appreciate your time. We'll catch up with you again next week. We got to find a time. We've been talking about sometime before too long down at the DNVR bar in studio. We got to find a time to get it done.
Hey, I look forward to that. You guys got a great thing going down there with, first of all, the bar and the eats and then the studio as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So
I want to ask for a tease. I do want to ask for a tease for episode number 100.
I was going to say.
You don't have to give it, but I'll tease anyone listening. Cargo tells the genesis of the story of how he got the nickname the Little Pony, which I didn't actually know where it started from. He does talk about that, and he talks about why he smiles. I mean, when you think of Carlos Gonzalez, you think of his smile, and you covered it all on the Drew Goodman podcast. Got to download that and listen and subscribe.
Did you like the story? And I was talking to our friend Joe, who's his financial advisor, literally an hour ago. We were talking for a half hour. Did you like that story about how he told Cargo he had a crappy year? It was a year Cargo hit 40 home runs. Like, how many tackles did you make? I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, that's a great tease, because you could lose. I think you might be able to use that line in 2021. I think.
We'll
leave it at that.
We're gonna have fun. I gotta figure out what the heck we're doing next week. Number 100.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
I haven't fired myself yet.
Yeah, right. It is must listen stuff for all Colorado Rockies fans, especially, of course, anytime Carlos Gonzalez gets to hang around and tell stories. So make sure you're listening to that. Make sure you're following everyone on social media at Patrick Lyons, at Drew Creasman, at Drew Goodman 42, at DNVR_Rockies, of course, that you're subscribed to the DNVR.com, that you're helping out all of our sponsors by drinking your craft coffee and Breck Brew, and you're eating your Hassel Cattle Company beef, not all at the same time, or maybe all at the same time. Do what you do. Thank you all for continuing to be absolutely awesome out there. We promise to continue being absolutely Patrick Lyons, Drew Creasman, and Drew Goodman in here. And until next time, we will see you at the ball.